What's going on, ladies, gents, and kids of all ages? It is Eric coming back at you once again from the Nerd Cave, and as you may have expected, we have another deck tech video for you today. We're going to be back talking about Amethyst Steel, but not the same old Amethyst Steel that you typically see me talk about, where it's very aggro heavy. We're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about Amethyst Steel JAFAR, but before we jump into that deck list and what I think it should look like in set 7, as always, we got to give a big shout out to the Patreons for making the giveaways on the channel possible. Could not do any of this without you guys. If you guys want to check out the Patreon, it is linked in the description below. But without any further ado, let's jump into talking about Amethyst Steel JAFAR and how crazy it can be in set 7. So the first card we're going to be playing in the 1-drop slot is going to be Magic Broom, a 1-cost inkable 1/2 stat line questing for 1, with whenever you play another character, you may choose to banish this character to draw a card. Why are we playing Magic Broom over Turnabog? Because Magic Broom's ability is when you play another character, so it can be taken advantage of in real time. You can play a Magic Broom, play another character, and banish that Magic Broom, whereas with Turnabog you have to wait a full turn to be able to quest, and that's not quite as good with JAFAR. You need to be able to draw cards really quickly. Being able to draw cards really quickly, we are on 3 Mulan Disguised Soldier, a 1-cost inkable 2/1 stat line questing for 1, with the same ability as that symbol we saw so many sets ago, but a reverse stat line, so 2/1 stat line instead of 1/2. When you play this character, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. So you're not really going net 1 up on the card. You're losing that card right away, but it still counts as drawing a card, which is still going to trigger that JAFAR. I just can't get away from this card when it comes to Amethyst. It seems like such a staple on pretty much every Amethyst list now, and that is going to be Diablo Obedient Raven, a 1-cost inkable 0/1 stat line questing for 1. Typically you would think 0/1 is bad, but this guy has, when he's banished, he is going to draw you a card. You can go ahead and crash him into opposing characters to just go ahead and draw a card when you need to be able to do that, so don't forget about that. You know, sometimes you may want a quest, but if you need the card draw anyway, go ahead, take the card draw with crashing him in. You're still going to get that +1 lore if you have the JAFAR on the board anyway. Jumping over to the 2-cost slot, this isn't going to help you draw cards, but it is just such a good board presence in the early game for anything that is playing Steel, and that is going to be 4 Mr. Smee Bumbling Mate, a 2-cost inkable 3/3 stat line questing for 2, with at the end of your turn, if this character is exerted and you don't have a captain in play, he is going to take 1 damage. Don't believe we're playing any captains in this deck, so you're going to be looking at taking some damage with Smee, but still, it doesn't really matter as long as he's getting a couple quests in or taking out an opposing threat. That's all that you really want to be doing with that Smee. Probably some of the best draw value in the game, and a card I almost played 4 of, but you just don't really want to get stuck with 2 of these in your hand, is Doc Bold Knight, a 2-cost uninkable 1/3 stat line questing for 1, with when you play this character you may discard your hand to draw 2 cards. So even if you're discarding your hand, drawing 2 cards for 2 ink can be a super good value proposition, especially if you have that big JAFAR on the board. Also in the 2-cost slot, we are on just 2 Madam Mim Snake, a 2-cost inkable 3/3 stat line questing for 1, with when you play this character, banish her or return another character to your hand. I got to thinking about it with her. We're not taking quite as much advantage of the interplay triggers. There are definitely some in the deck. There's quite a few actually, but not as much as we have with other decks in the past, so I thought the Madam Mim Snakes were one area worth cutting the fat. It's really tough with this deck because there's a lot of cards you want to squeeze into it. Those Docs, for instance, are really good. Those Mr. Smees are just as good of a board presence without having to bounce something else, which the only target you really want to typically be bouncing in the early game as far as your 1-cost to be able to develop the snake on 2 is going to be that Mulan, because she does have an interplay trigger, but those other characters you're not really looking to bounce, so I figured developing Smee is just flat out better than Madam Mim Snake. Still in the 2-cost slot, we do have 3 Show Me More, a 2-cost uninkable action that is going to make each player draw 3 cards. This is not optional. Your opponent does have to draw 3 cards. You draw 3 cards, but 2 ink to draw 3 cards. Again, fantastic value proposition, even a little bit better than those Docs, and you're not being forced to discard anything, although you are letting your opponent draw some cards as well. But the fact that you're getting 3 cards for 2 and potentially 3 lore along with it is great. Now having access to Show Me More in the deck in addition to Whole New World, you're potentially able to make your opponent draw, because with this build I'm playing 3 Show Me Mores, 37 cards non-optionally, so they're going to potentially get run through 37 cards in their deck. If you played that additional Show Me More, you could push that up to 40 cards with the Show Me More. in the Whole New Worlds, and you can potentially make them draw some additional cards. This isn't forced on them, but typically they're going to be accepting it in the early game, and that is going to be 4 Amethyst Chromacon, a 2-cost inkable item with Exert It, and each player may draw a card. So if it's in the late game and you're trying to deck them, you do want to take advantage of these Amethyst Chromacons before some of those other cards so that they are saying yes to it. If you wait until it's the end and it's an optional trigger for them, they're like, I have 5 cards, they're just going to choose not to draw. So don't do the Amethyst Chromacon last. These are also obviously fantastic with Jafar. They're great in the early game just to get some additional cards in your hand. It again is letting your opponent draw cards, but you look at things like Daisy Duck that are being so taken advantage of, that are letting your opponents draw cards potentially and not even letting you draw cards, but they're letting you gain 2 lore with a 1/4 body on the board, and that card still played so heavily. I think Amethyst Chromacon falls into a similar boat. Next up, jumping over to the 3-cost slot, we are on 4 of our first Jafars in the deck, and that is going to be Jafar Aspiring Ruler, a 3-cost inkable 3/2 stat line questing for 2, with when you play this character, chosen character gains Challenger +2 this turn. So it's not when he enters and when he leaves like Merlin Crab, and it's only Challenger +2, not Challenger +3, but he is going to be questing for 2, and he is obviously going to be a shift target for our big Jafar. Speaking of shift targets, probably one of the best shift targets in the game, definitely the best shift target for the big tank is going to be Tinkerbell Fast Flyer, a 3-cost inkable 1/3 stat line questing for 2 with evasive. Saw that Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer get taken advantage of, exact same card but in Ruby so many sets ago. It's not something we see played as much now because those Sisus and those Brawls and stuff like that are going to be dealing with it. Same thing with this Tinkerbell, so she's not going to be good in every single matchup, but when you can get her down in a matchup just where an evasive character is good, she is fantastic, and she is a fantastic shift target for that big Tinkerbell on turn 4. Next up, still one of the best cards in the game, we are on 4 Madam Mim Fox, a 3-cost inkable 4/3 stat line questing for 1 with Rush. Is going to make you bounce a character back to your hand when it comes into play, but it can be potentially a good way to protect some of those easier to kill threats. It is a great way to take advantage of those enter play triggers more than once. This is another reason we reduced on those snakes, because we are still playing the full package of Foxes. Fox, one of the best cards in the game, dealing with a lot of those 4 willpower characters that we're seeing more and more of recently, so Fox is, in my opinion, better than ever. Next up, we are on 2 Pete Games Referee, because we are taking advantage of the bounce package. You've seen me talk about this with Amethyst Steel decks in the past if you're watching my previous videos, but since you have the bounce package, you can potentially recycle those Petes. So I do opt in most of these decks to play 2 or 3 Petes, because this deck does need so much card draw and has so much else going on with it in terms of combo pieces. Did opt to go with the 2 Petes. He is a 3-cost inkable 3/3 stat line questing for 1, with when you play him, your opponent cannot pay actions until the beginning of your next turn, so you're just going to shut off their ability to play any actions, sing any songs, do any of that jazz for an entire turn while it cycles back around to you, and you are potentially able to win the game with Jafar. Last card in the 3-cost slot, and an absolute must for any Jafar deck, we are on 4 Friends on the Other Side, a 3-cost inkable action song. Just draw 2 cards straight up. The fact that you can sing it, it is potentially going to be free if you have a 3-cost character in play to sing it, and just draw even more cards with that big Jafar. Gain you some more lore. This deck is potentially able to gain 20 lore in 1 turn under the right circumstances. Is it likely? Probably not. Is it possible? Yes, it is. Next up, jumping over to the 4-cost slot, we are on 4 Jafar Dreadnought, a 4-cost inkable 3/4 stat line questing for 1. One of my favorite Jafars. He does shift for 2. We don't have any cheaper Jafars in the deck for him to shift on to, but we don't need them. And during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may draw a card, so he is another potential way to draw a card, as well as be a pretty aggressive threat in the early game. Obviously, if you're able to shift him, he is aggressive even earlier on, but even on turn 4, he's still going to be doing pretty good things. He really just needs to come down and survive that turn, so you have a shift target for Jafar on 5. And when you do get that Jafar, that big Jafar down on 5, exactly what you want to be doing with it is our next card in the 5-cost slot. Our only card in the 5-cost slot is 4 Whole New Worlds, a 5-cost uninkable action song that's going to make each player discard their hand and draw 7 cards. That is some of that non-optional card draw you can be forcing on your opponent, as well as potentially gaining 7 lore if you are able to sing it with that big Jafar. Next up, a card that is kind of been a staple of Jafar, has gotten a lot better as an option in Jafar since we do have that Tinkerbell Fast Flyer as a target now, is Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, a 6-cost inkable 4/5 stat line, questing for 2, shifting for 4, so that it's right on curve with that fast flyer. You go fast flyer on 3, big tink on 4, potentially in those matchups where you need to do it. And when you play this character, deal 1 damage to each opposing character, so it's going to be great into those aggro matchups or just when you want to put some damage on the opposing characters. And during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you're going to be able to deal 2 damage to any chosen opposing character. So that is going to be fantastic at just kind of clearing up some of those board threats if they're not necessarily anticipating the shift line, which not everybody is. Tinkerbell has seen a little bit less play, and particularly in Amethyst Steel, not everybody is used to the deck playing fast flyer. So when you are able to shift her on 4 and not only deal 1 damage across the board, but then potentially take a challenge for 4 that your opponent's not expecting, clear an opposing threat, and deal 2 damage to another one, it can be absolutely a game swinging move and really open up the field for your Jafar to be free and clear coming down in the following turn. And the last card in the deck, and certainly the most important card in the deck, the card that the deck is built around, is Jafar Striking Illusionist, a card that has become a lot more of a budget option in recent time. This used to be like a $15 to $20 card when it first dropped. I think it was more of like a $30 card. Now we're talking about maybe like a $5 card, more for foil obviously, but for a non-foil Jafar, I think it's like in the $5 to $6 range. It's 7 cost, inkable, 4/5 stat line, questing for 1, shifting for 5, so perfectly on curve with those Jafar Dreadnought. Your other Jafar is coming down on 3, so you know, decide whether or not you want to quest with that. You do see some Jafar decks play more Jafars just in case those targets are getting wiped out, so they can make sure they have something to shift onto. Opted to go with 8 Jafar targets. I think that is plenty personally. He does have evasive, which is fantastic, so when she is on the board, he does need to be dealt with either direct removal or an opposing evasive character that's able to deal 5 damage to him without being banished themselves, which, you know, is possible but is unlikely. And his final ability, which is the most important one and the one that the deck is built around, during your turn while this character is exerted, whenever you draw a card, gain 1 lore. Obviously the best thing to do with that is to get him down, use him to sing Whole New World. Obviously he's exerted when that happens, you gain 7 lore, you draw 7 cards, and then bonus points if you have some additional ink still open to draw additional cards with things like Show Me More or other characters to sing things like Friends on the other side. You could very likely be taking a 10+ lore swing in a single turn, which is nothing to shake a stick at. So I do think this deck is fantastic. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Do you think Jafar is a potentially competitive deck in the current meta? Do you think Ruby Sapphire sweeping things has just put Jafar in a worse position than ever? Certainly haven't seen this deck in particular in any recent top 8s, but I think it is still highly competitive. I think the addition of things like Show Me More has made a potentially major difference to how the deck is going to function. But like I mentioned, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the videos. It helps us to get recommended to people who may enjoy the videos that you're enjoying. And when you see those toys, video games, and big old Jafars gaining a bunch of lore off in the distance, remember, it is not a mirage. You guys have a good day.